So let's unofficially call this meeting to order. We won't be taking any action tonight because a couple of the trustees still need to be sworn in by Terry Emilini, but I think we can unofficially run through the agenda and, just not take any action. If you haven't yet, you need to go, that's here, sorry. If you haven't yet, you need to, Selena, go to the Terry Emilini, and yes, you know that, okay, good. So first thing is, why don't we all introduce ourselves? I'm Patrick White, I'm the chair of the Board of Selectmen.
Selena Lamb, resident of Stockbridge.
Randy Warner, I'm also a resident of Stockbridge.
Elizabeth Wheeler, resident of Stockbridge and on the planning board.
I am Don Eaton, also a Stockbridge resident.
I'm Jan Ackerman, a Stockbridge second homeowner.
Excellent. Okay, so a couple of things that we need to just some housekeeping. One, we had a bit of a legal misunderstanding, we'll say, in that it turns out that Affordable Housing Trust Fund trustees are limited to 2-year terms. And we have a member, Liz, who was appointed to a 3-year term. And so the select board will need to clean that up and reappoint for a 2-year term. We also had 2 of the initial trustees have decided that for whatever reason that this is not going to work for them. Jamie indicated that she felt she didn't have enough time to commit to it. And Jay also, as the chair of the finance committee, has also elected not to serve. So the select board will take that up at an upcoming meeting, reappointment of 2 more trustees. And if anybody out there wants to be considered, we are certainly encouraging you to send an email to selectmen plural at Stockbridge MA, that's with a hyphen.gov, and you can put your name in. And I did want to thank Jay for all the hard work that he did shepherding the funding through the community preservation committee, as well as putting together the trust documents. And I really think we owe him a debt of gratitude for the hard work that he did. And I also want to thank Jamie and Chuck for, making this project a real priority for the town. So my guess is we'll take up appointments at the next select board meeting, which is not the one tomorrow, but on October 27th. So I encourage anybody who has an interest in serving on this committee, watch the tape today and you'll see what what it will entail, and if you have an interest in it, let us know. Okay, so I think the first order on Jay's agenda was to elect officers. This will be an informal election, and I just think you all should talk about the various roles and if you have any interest in serving in them. And then, because not everyone's been sworn in, we won't take any votes tonight, but at least people can get off and running and sort of figure it out for the next time in terms of just going through the actual official vote. So kind of open it up to all of you to sort of have a chat.
Who wants to start?
Well, I would like to suggest or maybe nominate when we get to that stage to have Randy Warner be the chair of the committee. And that's based on, she has quite extensive experience in residential housing development, particularly with community engagement and approval, and also has banking experience. So
Right.
I think all of those things would be very good assets for this group moving forward. And so that would be my suggestion.
So we haven't actually had a chance to meet and talk. So I'm so curious about your background and how long you've been here. And when we talk about community engagement, what that consists of.
And everyone, I just encourage you, because there's people on Zoom and people watch after the fact, we have to use our outside voices just a little bit so the mics pick them up.
Thank you, Selena. Well, my background, I've lived in the town full-time since 2018. We moved here from New York. And we have been spending for the considerable years that we've been married here in the summertime. So we've been acquainted with Stockbridge in the Berkshires, my husband and myself. I'm married, we have one son, and he now has a son. So we have, and we all live together in a multi-generational house, which is a lot of fun. My background is that I'm a real estate developer. I build commercial buildings and housing. And I have done a rather large affordable, it was actually affordable. It wasn't deemed as such, but in Rhode Island, the pricing is such that the ability to buy a really large unit in an industrial building, I bought 2 mill buildings in a town called Pawtucket, Rhode
I know
Island.
it very well.
Oh, do you? Do you know Rhode Island?
Yeah, of course.
Well, you will probably know it's called the Bucket. It's rather not a place that people in Rhode Island run to buy high-end.
The Bucket?
Real estate. It's exactly what it's
Bucket,
called,
okay.
the Bucket. It was the first water-powered woolen mill in the United States. In 1795, there was a fantastic mill that's a historic building now there. And I bought 2 mills across from that mill and converted it to 59 live-work artist lofts. And we appealed to a pretty wide range of people, both doctors and lawyers and artists and young people and old people. And I was very pleased with the mix of people. So in terms of that particular project, there was an enormous amount of, if you know Rhode Island and you know Pawtucket, you know what a community outreach that was to make that happen. And people were very dubious that a first-class project would be successful there. I'm happy to say it was. I also build office buildings and I build industrial buildings. I've done downtown office buildings in Boston. For many years, we lived in Boston. And so I've spent most of my adult life, I had a career in advertising before I started as a real estate developer. And I did that primarily because my husband decided to be an architect. And so
Throw you in.
I had the opportunity to actually sit in on he decided to spend a lot of time in education. So we have a lot of rather expensive wallpaper as a result, but we had a lot of fun. And as a result, I was exposed to particularly historic buildings. So I have a particular passion for historic buildings. And when we moved here, we found a historic building that was in very, very sad repair. I think you probably
I'm familiar with it.
you know that building. And so we have spent the last 4 years restoring and adding on to that building. So, and now I'm not really looking for new development projects. And I got interested in this when Patrick announced at the town meeting that we were going to have an affordable housing. I've spent other things in my life doing social justice work and research. And so I have a passion also for making change that's socially oriented. And I think this is a town that has as we all know, we have an amazing reputation as one of the most charming towns in America. And for the size of our town, I think you could say that we have national recognition, but we don't have a lot of diversity here. And I think that this group has the opportunity, I think, to do an enormous amount of good and bring some new blood and really do provide a real service, because there are people like the woman who runs the Stockbridge housing, the Heaton Hall project. Andrea lives in Chicopee and she's on duty 24/7. And the idea that she has to drive from Chicopee kind of makes me think this is not right. But there are opportunities, I think. And I think there's opportunity here to improve Pinewood. You know, that's a project that needs a lot of TLC. Fortunately, Heaton Hall is, I think, in quite good shape, but there's space for expansion there. And I think that if we're clever and creative, we can find spaces in this town to encourage, we won't be doing, I don't envision that we actually will be owners or developers, but I hope we will be the spirit behind some new ideas. So that's what interests me.
Thank you, because we've been trying to connect for like 3 weeks.
So
Thank you.
That's
Yeah,
the high points.
great.
Did anybody else want to discuss the chairmanship?
I'm okay.
Okay, so do you want to have like a consensus? So I will suggest to you that you work with Michael we'll figure out the schedule for the next meeting tonight, and then work with Michael on the agenda, and the first thing on it will be the actual, formal election of officers. I believe you also need a vice chairman. Is anyone thinking of?
But should we maybe pause there and wait until we have 2 new members?
Well, you're not going to be able to vote on anything tonight.
Right.
Yeah,
Right,
okay.
but so that they have an opportunity.
Well, I'll probably fill in for, with the select board side, it certainly, if my colleagues approve it, I'll be one of the 2 members. So then there'll be 1 net new member besides around the table. And yeah, so I think that's great.
But if you prefer,
No, but I think if we're going to do it, we should just have everybody here and know who's involved and let them have an opportunity.
Is there anyone else that's interested in becoming the co-chair?
I think Janet is, correct?
Jenna, would you be willing?
I would be willing but if someone else,
Co-chair or the vice chair, I believe that.
Oh, vice chair.
if you're interested in doing it, that would be okay.
I'm actually, if I don't have to have any office,
Yeah.
I would prefer not to.
Okay.
So we're going to call it vice chair?
Well, I believe that I believe, and I haven't studied this because I wasn't expecting to be sitting up here today, but I believe that there's a chair, a vice chair, a secretary, and a treasurer. And when Michael comes in, we'll confirm whether the treasurer is the town treasurer or if we need a separate treasurer for that. So in a group of, 7 folks, 4 of us, 4 of you, at least 3 and possibly 4 will need to be officers. This is a little bit of a different type of committee than the other town committees in that this is, it's an independent committee with fiduciary responsibilities. And so, the state highly regulates how this needs to be formed and what folks need to do. So. Okay.
And I think that Liz is already starting the process of taking notes. And
Yep.
part of the job of the clerk, I would.
Yes. Now,
I didn't see.
Now, one of the things that you need to decide as a group is whether you need secretarial support. So the policymaking boards in town, the select board, the planning board, the zoning board of appeals, because these are legal decisions that can be challenged, we actually have hired staff that takes the minutes. And Michael and I feel that this group, not to say you can't take the minutes, of course, but that this group kind of falls into that category. And so, so far the town has appropriated $225,000 in trust money. And so with the other boards, there's several $1,000s, I don't know the exact amount, which is designated to have someone actually take the minutes and send out the agendas and do all the rigmarole that fulfills the legal requirements of the board. So when Michael and I were on the call for the Regional School District Planning Board, which is the merger of Berkshire Hills and South Berkshire, that started at 5:30. So he's still on that call. He's just down the hallway. He's going to be coming here. They're talking about kind of how they're going to finance it, which is a very important topic for the town. So, we're kind of splitting duty here tonight, and I'm stalling a little bit on some of these issues because he knows way more than I do about some of them. So anyways, why don't we circle back to the question, and we don't need to decide that tonight. But as I said, you can take some of the funds that have been appropriated to you and use it to provide a support person, or not. That's up to the board. That's your responsibility to decide.
I asked Michael about that, and the cost is they pay $50 a meeting to have someone do the administrative work. So it seems like a very good.
It seems like a deal.
Great investment.
It's a good
I think
deal.
so, especially if I'd have to do it, and then I would put less work into whatever I'm researching as opposed to writing these up.
Yeah.
So I would rather see somebody who
Yeah, of
also
course.
understands the legalese to take it. I'm just doing this tonight because I'm the only one.
I think that's a great idea.
But I think whoever comes to it could also watch us on CTSB and write them up themselves.
Right.
Michael says that's what they often do.
Good.
Is that they watch it on Zoom, so they don't really even have to be present,
Right,
so.
slowly.
But Selena, we haven't heard from you. Is there any particular position that you'd be interested
I
in?
am not interested in a position. I am a very full-time working mom. So, and on a lot of other committees also. So.
We will find ways to.
But I am very eager to help with this. So put me to work, but I definitely don't want to chair or co-chair.
So we have, the only question now then is the treasurer and whether we need a treasurer.
And we can have Michael answer that. He'll be in shortly.
Yeah. I think the trust document provides for a treasurer, provides that we have one. That doesn't mean that the treasurer really has to account for the money but
No.
might have to sign the checks.
Right. It might have to be like somebody who basically takes the reports from the town treasurer and signs off on it. Obviously we don't we don't get our own checkbook and, sort of decide, okay, 100 for you, 1,000 for you. Obviously the town will manage all the funds and we have town staff to do that. So,
But I don't know, we'll have to see. Patrick, I think your plate is full. You aren't volunteering to be treasurer.
I think we should just wait and see whether we need a separate one. I believe that the town treasurer will play this role. Yeah.
We'll do the main work, but
Right.
I don't know, Don, if we need one.
Yeah.
Are you good at signing checks?
Yeah, but I'm not really good. I'm not a treasurer. I've never been a treasurer. I'm not a financial guy.
Okay,
Not that way, so.
looks like we don't have anybody.
Look at it.
You are most.
I was the treasurer of Laurel Hill. I do the checks for the CFO for the Waldorf School. I'm happy to be treasurer if we can find somebody and we need one. I don't believe we need one. Okay. So do you want to, kind of going back to Randy, you had thought about some topics for discussion. We can really talk about anything that you want tonight.
Does everybody have my little sheets? You have one? Jan, do you? Okay. I gave you one,
yeah.
okay. Patrick, do you have one?
Is this no, I don't believe I do.
Yeah. The second one on my little list, and I know that others may have.
This one has your note.
Yes, so if there's anything that isn't covered, please. The open meeting law actually is very, very important, and we have to defer till Patrick comes in, till Michael comes in, because there's a whole lot of things. I think you could probably do that session, because it's actually amazing. Michael was giving me some background, but we have to be very careful. We have to, even if we have task force that have a majority of us, and right now only being 5, that's 3 people. So if 3 people get together, you have to have notice and agenda, and you have to, so there's a lot of rules that probably most of us will.
I know.
We'll look to you, Liz, for knowing more than the rest of us do, but I was surprised. So Michael there should be something in the back of our books if he had time. That talks about open meeting law. Did it get in there?
Yep, there it is.
Oh, good.
Page 20.
Terrific. And next time, we're bringing dividers so that you won't have to search for the various pieces. But so Michael will do that. I think that the next section is not particularly in any order of importance, but I think it's important that we gather everyone's ideas about really what we think our priorities might be, at least where our focus might be, what we need to gather for information, whether we need a housing production plan or a housing needs plan, what kind of information we need to gather. It's my understanding that we have at least $25,000 or more for the housing, if we want to hire consultants.
Yeah, we did
Gather
it.
information.
We appropriate actually 50. And then in addition to that, there's the 225 that we have already appropriated at town meeting. So 50 came from our ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act funds, and 225 came from the Community Preservation Committee, 100 in the first group, tranche, whatever, and then 125 at the last town meeting.
Okay.
So,
So we have money if we want to spend it on consultants or gathering information, because it seems like it would be prudent to me to gather some facts so that as we pick some strategies for what we're going to actually try to promote or try to accomplish, that we have some help, because that we are a lay board. Nobody is a full-time employee. Everybody is fully occupied otherwise. And I think Liz is overoccupied and Selena is completely occupied. So I listed a few things. Perhaps everybody wants to just chime in on sort of either the things I have or things that they have that aren't included here.
Well, one of the things that I think would be very helpful, since the 2020 census data, I gather, is not going to be available until sometime next spring, but I would imagine that someone in the town administration actually pulls together those numbers or could work with us to identify what those look like, so that we could update this number of affordable housing units and percentage in the town.
Yeah,
For
I think it's way
2020.
out.
So I think if Patrick, you can tell us who might be the best.
well, I think Andrea, hi, Andrea, you're on, yes? Andrea is much more of an expert at this than I am. I believe that, the units at Pine Woods, the units at Heatonport and the units at Riverbrook all count toward the affordable housing numbers that we have. And then the census figures for the number of actual, it's my understanding they're based on the full-time residential number of homes. So we're over 10%, because with 113 units, and I think in the 2010 census, there was something like 1,000, somehow they came up with a number of 1,000 homes owned by full-time residents. I believe that is significantly higher than what the current thinking is in the assessor's office. But I don't have a sense of how that gets updated. And Michael and Andrea, I will defer to, folks who actually work in government to, guide us on that. Andrea, do you have any thoughts on that? She might be stepped away.
No, I'm right here. I do not know how the census counts
Yeah.
the total household.
I'm pretty sure that's how it is. Okay. And, so the select board has kind of teed up this group to do two things. One is to think strategically about the very long term, and that is to really manage and facilitate a process to build consensus in town for what the decision should be. So the reason why we looked at something like a housing production plan or housing needs plan is it has a significant portion of it is public meetings designed to build consensus. So it is not, where, as we look at there's a whole lot of items in the toolkit that this group could take a look at in conjunction with the voters and with not just the voters, all the residents, all the stakeholders, if you will, I mean, you could look at ways to, expand or renovate Pine Woods. You could look at possibly, there's a couple of, I think, footprints where you might be able to expand heat and court. The question of whether some of those units might be market units, because I believe up to 30% of heat and court could be market if we wanted it to be. That might have a benefit for, for folks who need to downsize, and we've got about 1,000 full-time residents who are in their 60s or older. We know that some of them are going to need to downsize. So there's ideas to take a look at there, whether or not at some point you might want to look at partnering with a Habitat for Humanity, doing down payment assistance in conjunction with something like Habitat for Humanity. These are all things in your toolbox. And the idea of the plan is to flesh them out, work with somebody who's a professional in this area, do some analysis of trends and predictions and sort of tie it all together and manage a process to build consensus and prioritize. We're not gonna be able to do everything, all right? And as is often true, there's often more than one right idea, and there's often no perfect idea, all right? So this is just gonna be around consensus. It's gonna be around, discussions that start here, possibly working with a third-party consultant who has expertise in this area to come up with a plan and work together and, really try to make sure that is in conjunction with what the town folks need now or feel we need. Last year, we went through a similar process with the Municipal Vulnerabilities Program, which is basically the state has money for climate change that it funds in this. And the reason why it's related to this is that we pitched the state when we applied, and everybody gets this grant if they apply for it, on doing a resilient housing study, which was focused on senior housing. Okay. And that is, I sent that to Randy today, and I'll make sure that everybody has a copy of it. So we have actually a whole plan that was involved in like these kind of, large, I think we had 7 or 8 people come to the meetings to discuss this. It was, I think they're on Zoom. Again, there's really some body of work that's already been done in this area that you can build upon. And similar to that, I think that the goal of the strategic thinking is really to build some consensus around what's the number 1 priority, what's the number 2 priority, what's the number 3 priority, knowing that, there's a finite number of resources and money, and sort of figuring out how to go from there. All right. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, there's some short-term priorities you may want to consider. And I think that goes to what Randy's outline here is. For example, Andrea, Heaton Court was built in what, the 80s? I'm pretty sure it was built in the 80s, yes.
1977.
87, yes. So, 77. Oh, I was like a freshman. And Pine Woods was built around 2000, correct? Late 90s?
I believe so.
Yeah. All right. So, and just in discussions with Kathy Wiggins, who's the project manager at Pine Woods, and June Wolf, who is the construct manager, at Construct's main office. Yeah, there's, you start to look at units that are 20 to 25 years old. Some of them have long-term residents. So as units turn over, they get a paint job. But if you're a long-term resident there, you don't get a paint job until somebody moves. And so, there may be some maintenance issues that this group might want to consider augmenting. For example, like, kitchens that are 20 or 25 years old. There may be some upgrades to kitchens. There may be some paint. There may be, I believe that they're close to having enough money to finish the paving of the parking lot that's starting this year. The first half is going to be done, but maybe some supporting that. It may be things like, whatever the needs are that are identified, and going through a similar process with Andrea and the Stockbridge Housing Authority at Heaton Court, really taking a look at how, incrementally you can improve people's quality of life and improve the, and improve and support, not necessarily completely fund, but, what some of those needs are. Because oftentimes, there's money to do one thing, but there's not money to do another thing. We ran into that with the BCAC, with 2 weeks ago at the select board meeting where there was money for insulation, but if people had knob and tube wiring, for some reason, the state and federal governments don't let like the funds pay for it. And so, having to kind of figure out ways to augment the budget might be something that you want to take a look at. So it gets even a little bit more complicated because we've got other sources of money. We've got every year the town gets somewhere around between $400,000 and $500,000 in a new community preservation committee money. A minimum of 10% of that has to go to affordable housing. And a maximum of, I guess, because 10% in each of the three buckets, a maximum of 80% could go in. But we also have some balances. I think there's over $500,000 in prior balances that are undesignated in that committee. So you've got a couple $100,000. You've got money at CPC. There's going to be some coordination that I would suggest between the chair of the CPC, who's Sally Underwood Miller, and the chair of this group to sort of make sure that you're kind of discussing things along with Andrea and along with June and Kathy. Yep.
I'm trying to catch up. That committee you mentioned, preservation, which
Community preservation, yeah.
Community Preservation Committee.
Yeah, so community preservation, basically 3% of, it was voted in Stockbridge in 2000, I believe. And so 3% of your tax dollars gets added on. So if you owe $1,000 in property taxes, you pay $1,030. And that $30 goes into community preservation, and the state basically creates an incentive by usually matching it. So for every 30 that you spend, the state gives us 30 and we get $60 to spend on either open space or housing or historic preservation. So that's sort of a ongoing regular kind of pool of money. But in the past, folks like Andrea, what's some of the projects we recently funded by CPC for Heaton Court?
The CPC has been very generous and a lifesaver. We recently did all of our roofs, all of them. They're all done. They're all up to date.
Right.
We've got a siding project coming up with the cement board.
Yeah.
That's been taking a beating because of the elements. There's been smaller projects, a $10,000 outside lighting project.
Right.
Part of the alarm system is like underground, and you helped us with some sub pumps and things like that. It's been very helpful.
So CPC has been
maintained.
CPC has been a source of direct funding for Pine Woods. The last two cycles we funded, I think 150 each for was it 75 each or 150 each, whatever, for the driveway. And has also been a direct source of funding for the housing authority. I think that the whole trick here is going to be you guys not only also get money from CPC, but there's other sources of funding available for this group beyond CPC. So there's a little bit of complexity in figuring out where these sources of funds are coming from, and then how to coordinate with CPC so you're not creating kind of just administrative bureaucracy, but also working efficiently together to sort of figure out what the needs are and evaluate those needs. So, I don't know what the answer to that is, but you're all great, smart people, so you can figure it out. So, you got CPC, and that funding cycle starts in December, and then it's completed by the end of January. So this is going to be a conversation that, the short-term point I'm making is, in addition to the housing production plan or whatever this strategic document is, you've got maybe some short-term needs. For example, the siding or whatever, that the folks decide they want to do. And whatever, Pine Woods wants to look for in this round, just to kind of coordinate those efforts and make sure that we're kind of speaking with one voice as a town. So.
Do you expect us, or is it going to be our responsibility to ask CPC to give us money or to give Andrea money or to give Pine Woods money?
My suggestion is that you all figure it out, and that CPC is independent of any other board like you are. This is completely up to you. It's not up to me. It's not up to the select board.
How has it worked in the past? So, and I'm completely new to this, so
Yeah.
I hope I'm not making you.
No, it's
repeat
fine.
yourself. So with Heaton Hall, who owns Heaton Hall? Andrea is the director. So, and is Andrea like making the grant requests? And the same thing, but Pine Woods
privately held, and then we have a contribution. So we clearly would need to get together with Andrea to understand
Yeah,
how,
so-
you know, what that history has been and how we can help and support and help maybe analyze. Right? I mean,
So, and Andrew, if I get any of this wrong, feel free to, Stockbridge Housing Authority owns Heaton Court.
Okay.
And that's a quasi-public agency that is independent of the town, but sort of part of the town.
Yep.
Construct is a nonprofit. I believe it's based in Great Barrington. I don't know.
Oh, it is Construct. I thought it
Yeah,
was.
no, that's only Pine Woods.
Somebody kept saying Connecticut for Construct, that it was privately held and not.
No. It's Construct owns
Okay,
Pine
great.
Woods.
Okay, great.
So, but it's not it's a nonprofit, obviously.
Right.
And so, so in the past, because there's been no affordable housing trust fund, the money has typically gone, the grant, of course, Andrea and Construct are getting grants from the state and federal government all the time, I assume. We're not really involved in that as a town. Where the town has been involved in the past is that the CPC is town funds. The Community Preservation Committee is made up of a representative from the select board, or two representatives from the select board, a representative of the finance committee. Who else, Carol? Who else is on CPC? You got, conservation has a representative, right? Yep. And then we have someone from historic preservation or this. Yep. So it's basically a consensus board.
At Construct, for example, does anyone know, do we have like an advocate there for Pine Woods? Do we have someone advocating to that
Who's we?
board? Does the town of Stockbridge in any way, do we have any any representation on the Construct board or advocating for that property at Construct?
I don't know the specific answer to that question, but I know that Kathy Wiggins works on site and is the project manager of Construct. So I would assume that's
It's a
part of her role.
super active
Yeah.
board, right?
Yeah.
Great board. So
Yeah.
Don,
that
do
it's
you
in
have-
that condition is.
Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you go ahead.
That it's in that condition is curious, right? Because it's a great board.
Yeah. I think there's been some underfunding issues, that one of the things I think that, you look at just the things I listed, appliances, there's some need for siding there, similar to what Andrew was talking about. There's some need for paint, and there's a need to finish the parking lot. And whether or not the town boards fund 100% or more likely do matching funds, some kind of match. I think that there's been some both more aesthetic, but also some more significant, funding needs at Pine Woods. But when June and Kathy come in and talk to your group, they'll be able to identify them more closely.
Andrea, has Heaton Court been de-leaded? It's 1977.
Should be good, right?
Do we know if it's,
Yes, I do have reports.
so it was de-leaded?
I'd have to go look at
Okay, yeah, just out
I
of
would have to go
curiosity,
look at
because
the
it's
reports that everything's been lead
1977.
tested.
Were
Great.
they still doing lead paint in 77?
It's the 1978.
Get all
is-
of that.
1978 is the break point. Anything pre-1978 has to be de-leaded.
Oh, Don, does the CDC have a connection with Construct?
Two separate entities. I mean, they're aware of each other, but there's no legal connection. They're just separate entities.
But do they collaborate or
They have, they're not now,
they're not now?
yeah.
I think CDC is more finance, right?
Yeah,
Construct is that property manager,
yeah,
property owner and manager.
yeah. Like, I believe that we were involved a lot back in 2000 somehow in the building of Pinewood. It somehow, so there was some funding involved in it originally.
Oh, from the CDC?
Yeah, 25 years ago or whatever. But I'll be glad at some point also to bring in the ED at some point, from CDCSB at some point, once we figure out, what, our direction and what we may want to do and how we want to do it, and let her come in and just kind of speak and see if there's
Collaboration.
ways we can collaborate. I think, it definitely could be. Nice to have some land.
I think in summary, though, there's no question that Pine Woods has maintenance issues. And what role we want to play, or we should play, or they really need us to play. I did have the opportunity to have quite a long telephone conversation with June Wolf. And just to clarify, there's been a lot of conversation about the problems for the maintenance is that the project is not big enough. And the answer to that is that was a tax credit project. And the way they raised the bulk of the money to build that was selling the tax credits. Well, tax credits run out after 15 years, so they're over. And the reason that you can't, and so I also spoke to a woman named Laura Shurpin, who is the community assistance person at Mass Housing in Boston. She said that typically the tax credit projects, after 15 years, they resell new tax credits or they refinance. And they borrow new money and they use that new money to do the deferred maintenance that went on while the tax credits were expiring. And the problem is that it's not any state or federal regulation that's the problem, it's a market regulation. That the people, because during the Trump era, there was no investment and there were no tax credits. And so there was a lot of, there was not much activity. So now people are beginning, because also Trump passed that big, tax bill, then people weren't looking for tax credits. But now there is an appetite for tax credits, but the appetite is for the new, large, shiny. It's not for the shabby and the old. People
Right.
want to put their money into new, shiny pieces of paper. So they're having trouble. Their broker, the way they finance using tax credits, they have a broker. And the broker has told them that they can't raise any tax credit money. So that's a significant source of new money
Right.
they don't have.
Right.
And the idea that have been
The
discussed,
construct doesn't have, sorry.
That's right, that's
The construct
correct.
Doesn't have, okay.
construct.
Doesn't.
Also, she has volunteered, June has volunteered, and I think it would be very useful whether she comes to our next meeting or the next meeting. And Andrea has volunteered that we should definitely have them here to discuss these projects with us. But June has volunteered. She has a presentation on what I call the alphabet soup. And there is a glossary of terms in our book. But she has a presentation to teach us about what all those things mean. Because they all talk in those alphabet soup language, like, what is it, Mass Housing, MHP, that's Mass Housing Partnership. Every organization has a little code like that, so I don't think we can learn them all at one night. But she would also then give us a detailed conversation and presentation on Pine Woods.
Beginning with how it was originally funded.
Right.
And because I read somewhere in the documents that if CPA funds were not used in the original construction, that those funds cannot be used for renovations. I don't know.
Really?
I don't know if that's true or
That
not.
doesn't mean the housing trust,
That's somewhere.
CPC can fund the housing trust, and then whether or not the housing trust can, that's a question for the lawyers, but
Yeah.
I think that, just to sort of take a step back a little bit, I think if one of the opportunities then is how we take something that is a little weathered, I don't like the term shabby, but weathered, and make it nice and shiny again. And there's a number of things that could be envisioned, and I think that this is where really the creativity of the group comes in. For example, if each footprint of 2 units, you could have a renovation plan that might take place over a course of 5 years, where each 2-unit footprint was replaced by a 3 or 4-unit footprint, because it's around wetlands surrounding it, so you can't really expand out. Probably only can expand kind of up, but there's a lot of ways to think about how we start anew.
Are they,
And
how high are they now?
I think it's 2 units high now. Yeah,
We have a 35-foot maximum.
that doesn't apply to affordable housing.
Wow.
Affordable housing is built under a different set of
That's great
zoning.
news.
Do you want to join in. Would you like to sit in the front? I hate you sitting in the back there.
No, I like it back here.
Yeah.
I'm just taking notes for Stockbridge updates. We just happen to be talking about something I know about.
Oh,
Yeah,
good. So could you share what you know?
Jan, I certainly hope you're wrong, because I've been on CPC for 6 years or 8 years. And boy, we've helped with renovation
Yeah.
of Pinewoods and Heaton Court, and we did not fund either of them.
And everything is run through the lawyers. When
Okay.
when CPC funds things, every single item on the warrant.
Okay, so I must have
And that
misread
was-
that.
That was my next sentence.
right,
Thank you, Patrick.
Sorry about
Everything we fund goes to town council to check that. So I think we're okay in that one.
Okay,
For you to go to CPC as this body on behalf of, wow, I don't think you do as well as they're going directly.
Well, who knows, but that's not even, that requires a conversation between.
I don't think we have any
Yeah.
particular interest in bringing in money directly to us. We're really interested in what is going on there and what the constraints are and how we can help, because there's just no question, whether you call it shabby or you call it leaky or whatever you want to call it, it needs help. And there is no question that surely we don't necessarily have to have the money come here, but we can help.
And you may just want to play a role as by having the time or the energy, because this is specific to housing, there's an ability to drill down and become an advocate for and partner with the SHA and with Construct to really understand what the issues were. I mean, with the parking lot, the town actually had reached out 2 years ago to Construct to inquire about what they needed. And so really just helping,
Facilitate that.
facilitate it. Yeah, that's a good word.
I mean, because
Right.
they must have a plan. Construct is such a great organization. They can't be proud of what's going on there. Right? So there must be some, we're not the only ones in Stockbridge noticing that. Right? They're a
Yes.
very responsible gang. So it'll be interesting to understand what they see and how we can support.
And,
Right? 'Cause
and
we want it to be as great as it can be.
We, a little later on, but I really think we need, Michael, you probably don't want to sit down, but we've deferred a lot of things because you were out of the room.
All right,
So we're not going to let you go.
all right.
Anyway, I think though that we will be more effective if we sort of divide and conquer, that people volunteer for these particular, because right now we've got to get up a pretty steep learning curve. And having them come here, but before they come here, having at least one or maybe two of us on each one of these projects, I think would be the most effective way to tackle. And so I think it's a matter of who would like to raise his or her hand to, on Pinewoods. We know it's Pinewoods, and Heaton Court right now are the two major things we need to collect. And the other major thing is we need to make a decision. We need to gather the information about, and maybe we could talk about that for a minute. We could shift the conversation to a housing production plan, a housing needs study, what people's thoughts are about that. But
since this relates to the conversation on the open meeting law, one suggestion I might have is, for example, have a designated point person to work with CPC. One person can reach out to CPC, can have a conversation with Sally, and that's not a violation. Once you create a subcommittee of two or more, not to say that's a bad idea, but that just means you're going to have to schedule and do an agenda and do the 48-hour notice and the rest of it. So you could have a point person on Pinewoods, a point person on Heaton Court with the Stockbridge Housing Authority, a point person with CPC, a point person with to evaluate and schedule the consultants to come in and present to the group, and then perhaps work with the consultants on the housing plan, whatever it is you decide to do with that. There's a lot of micro tasks here that each person could kind of own one. And that might be a way to not have like 5 subcommittees literally having 6 meetings a month or 6 meetings every 2 weeks, because once you get to 2 or more, you're going to just be like doing, bureaucracy. So
Is it true, though, that once we're 7, if we had 2 people, that they have to go through their rigmarole?
well, it makes no difference whether you're 5 or 7. What matters is that if you designate a subcommittee and it's more than one person, a subcommittee could be just one representative of the board working with Michael. And that's okay. That's not a subcommittee as I understand it. So what you're really talking about is when a subcommittee needs to deliberate, the law is you have to do it in an open public meeting. When an individual is assigned, for example, I am the representative on the RSDPB representing the select board. Obviously when I call Lucy Prasker, who's the chair of that group, that's not a public meeting because there's not 2 of us of the select board who are on that. So, there may be some tasks that are so big, like dealing with the consultants on the housing plan, that you really want to have a subcommittee. But if the tasks are more like day-to-day management of a relationship with Andrea, that might be a great thing for one of you to kind of decide, okay, this is what I'm going to take on. That's just a suggestion, though. You guys can organize it however you want. And I don't know if you want to add to that.
Nope, I think you stated it.
While we're on this, Michael, maybe, is there anything else you want to say about the open meeting law?
I like to caution all the groups, and regularly I do send out notices about especially emails. So one of the things that it can be very easy to begin deliberating via emails, so make sure. I did include in there, it's in the back of your book, a notice that I've sent around to other boards speaking about what you can. So sharing information is something, but you can't deliberate on it. So if you're gonna supply information to the board prior to a meeting so everybody can read it before the meeting, that's fine, just don't deliberate on it. You can schedule. So if you're trying to schedule meetings, that is one of the times you are allowed to use email outside of the meeting to communicate to the fellow board members, say, hey, can we meet this day? So that's an allowed use. So, I did list the ones that are in there that you can do, but it's always just be careful that you're not deliberating on something using email. And it's so easy to hit reply all, and then the next thing you know, you've created a violation. So it's just be aware of it. It's right in the back. It's actually, I think it's the last page. And I also included some little points about when we're on Zoom, little things that if one committee member is on Zoom, then it's all roll call votes that have to be taken. So there's all these little nuances of the law. Patrick's well versed in it. I'm well versed in it,
I'm getting there.
Well versed in it from the planning board. And those that have served on public meetings, these are, some are newer with the remote participation because of COVID. That's where that came in. But it's in the back of the book there. So, the main thing is just be careful. The deliberation should be happening here in the public, and especially decisions need to be made at the meeting. So even if you have one person working with me on something, we're not making any decisions. The decisions are made at the board levels. So that's.
But if for some reason, one of us sends out something to all 5 of us now, and another one says, and say it's about Pine Woods, another one has a position and another one has another position, that's deliberation?
Yeah.
Don't express an opinion.
Don't express an opinion or deliberate, and make sure you don't do what's called serial emails, where you're saying serial communication, where you reply to one this way and then you talk to another and reply that, then it still can be considered.
Or the second person forwards it to the third person. Look at it. It's pretty easy. If you get a manual and you want to share it because it's a great guide to what other towns have done this size, what I do is I just say FYI and I send it out and I don't comment on it, and that is totally fine. What's not fine is for me to say, this is a great idea. And I especially think the town should do number 3 on this list because I totally support that. And I ran on it as a candidate. That's the kind of thing that you don't want to do, is express any kind of opinion. But, it's easy enough to put on the agenda and get the opinions out. It's just do background. And remember right now, because you do have 2 resignations, that there's only 5 folks on this. First of all, not everyone's been sworn in yet. So, for those of you not sworn in, you haven't broken any rules if you've been talking on email. But you're going to have to limit your emails to you have 7 to no more than one other person. And then once you're at a 7 board, you could have an email with 2 people on it. But it's not a huge deal, but you just the business of the public is conducted in public. That's the fundamental rule of the open meeting law. So just conduct the business in public. There's nothing, no.
Okay,
So to your question, Randy, about who would like to be volunteering to do some of these tasks and maybe one at a time, I guess I would be willing to do pretty much any of them. So maybe others would like to weigh in if there's one or two in particular that any of you would like to get involved with.
the things on offer are Pine Woods, Heat and Court, the housing needs / production plan are the 3 that I think, but then the 4th one could be gathering information of what others are doing, such as Lennox.
Right.
And also someone could take on the role of deciding, of organizing who could come to speak to us. And we have a lot of people who are offering, so, but it does need to be organized. We need to talk to them and see what they're going to say and see how long it is and that kind of thing, and then schedule it. And one of the things we also need to do, I think, is decide sort of in the next 2 months, how many meetings we want to have and when. Do we want to adopt this Wednesday timeframe? Is that a good night?
Yeah, before we go there, the only other one I would add is local, state, and federal funding partners, starting with community preservation, looking at state funding partners, looking at federal funding partners, and starting to understand the lay of the land, or how one of the things we tried to do with ARPA money was we only got like 500,000, so surrounding towns got a little more, because it has to do with census count. So our primary goal with ARPA was to try to leverage the money. So if when we put in 30,000 or 16,000 into the knob and tube project for homes that qualify for weatherization, that's because the banks were managing it and the utility companies were adding to it. And then the state and federal government pays for the insulation, and then the final homeowner gets their heating bill cut in half. So that's a good example of how we try to leverage the money. So in this case, really understanding how you can leverage your resources to make them go further I think is a single project that one of you could just take on and try to really become an expert in. So, that's all the other stuff you'd love to do.
I think Randy is the person for that.
Well, I don't know.
Or Janet.
Jan is,
So as an example, if one of us were to meet with Andrea and we would possibly sit down and find out what their most pressing needs are, what their ongoing needs are, and what their medium and long-term needs may be, and help put that in some sort of priority list of other things that we want to do.
Where they've come up against funding challenges, how they fund, like an understanding of that history, right?
Where they're
Coming from now, right? Because they do they do a lot of fundraising, but how are they apportioning funds to their different projects?
Is that going to be part of their presentation?
Don't know.
well,
Yeah.
want to ask her to, it's on there now.
And there's one other consideration to keep in mind. CPC money and all town money is authorized at town meeting, which is once a year. All right. You all can spend money whenever you have an agenda item, and 5 of you vote to do it. So one of the conversations that you might want to have as a, if Don, if you're the point person for SHA or for Construct or whatever, it's the emergencies that come up give you some flexibility that the rest of the town bodies who could help don't have. Because CBC is literally an annual cycle that ends with the May town meeting and it goes into effect in the next fiscal year on July 1st. So you guys it just takes 5 votes and so if a boiler blows up and they're like, we need 20 grand, we don't have a budget for it to fix it, you guys are in a position to do something about that relatively short order. And so that's a whole nother part of this, is just understanding that, you're not encumbered the way other funding sources, at least in town, are.
Does BNRC come in?
With one point to that.
Yep.
CPC fund money that you receive still has to be spent within the requirements of the CPC program. So one of the things like CPC can't do is it can't do maintenance. But it could do emergency repairs, but it can't do maintenance. So you gotta be.
So we'll need to go have Donna or you brief them.
Right, we would have to go over because your money so far that you've received is from CPC. And there are some limitations on CPC money.
And this has to do with the procedure maybe. So if a request comes in, that's got to be bounced off of Michael and town council and then go on your agenda. And all the time you're working with the partners to sort of figure out what their needs are and what we can legally do. It's not hard, but it's just,
Somebody came forward and said, hey, we want you to pay for the annual cleaning of our boiler.
Exactly.
You can't pay for the annual cleaning of the boiler. It's gotta be.
Right.
Yeah. Is the definition capital?
We don't know.
It depends. And when requests come in, we can always have them reviewed prior to, and CPC does that. They have like any requests that come through get checked by legal counsel first to make sure it meets the CPC requirements. And I would recommend the board does that too. So when you receive a request, you're considering it, we send a quick email out. The chairman of the board will be able to talk directly to legal counsel. So we'll be sending the name of that person down to legal counsel. And then you can ask them the question directly, or you can send it to me and I can ask them the question and get you the answer too.
So does it, I just wrote down Pine Woods, Stockbridge Housing, what neighboring towns are doing, what presentations we want to make or have organized to be made, and then dollars, money, vacuuming up, figuring out where money can come from as 5.
And the
I guess,
plan.
of the housing plan too.
Right. So.
Thank you.
Does BNRC play a role in here at all?
Natural.
No, the planning commission, sorry.
Berkshire
BRPC,
Regional.
Right. Do they play a role at all here, just even in terms of trend, and they're usually generating data on county growth and population?
So the town has a contract through the planning board with Berkshire Regional Planning now. We have a planner that works on site 1 day a week, is it?
Yep.
And so, the short answer is I have found that so many of these experts are happy to help you understand an issue. You just have to ask them. And so BRPC has a tremendous amount of data. I mean, they've got population studies. They've got they're worried about things all the time. And so, that might be another, and once again, they have got a really great line into where funding sources are. And so the person whose maybe responsibility is to start to get the lay of the land for funding, that would be a great relationship to build.
Is it
Berkshire Regional Planning, BRPC.
Berkshire Regional Plan.
Because there's Berkshire Natural
No,
Resources.
not that one.
So this is.
They don't build a lot of
this is
houses.
a Municipal
What's it called? Berkshire Regional.
BRPC.
Berkshire Regional Planning.
Who's the head of it these days?
PC.
It's Tom, what's his name?
Max,
Matusko, right.
oh my God.
As spelled with a Z, that's all I know. He's a very nice guy. I've talked to him a couple times.
Okay. Shall we see who would like to take
I'm happy to help with towns.
towns? Okay.
Towns, like finding out what the
Neighboring
other
towns.
towns are doing.
Okay, great.
That's,
All right. Which would then, why don't you take this BRPC too, since you
sure.
know
Yep.
something about
Yep.
that? I guess we should go around.
I'll do that.
Wait, could I ask a quick question? When we're talking about neighboring towns, how far afield do we want to go in the county? All right, we have south, central, and north.
Why don't we just start with like Lennox and Stock and Great Barrington?
And we could talk offline. I know
Yeah.
I've talked to a couple of them. The other thing you could do is that West Stockbridge just.
I think of comparable
West Stockbridge is doing a visioning
scale.
program right now to sort of figure out one of the things that they just did a survey on is affordable housing. And the guy's name was actually in today's paper, and he might be a good guy to talk to about doing a survey. You know, you might also look at towns about the same
that's what I
size
was-
that are a little
that's right.
further away, but that have kind of the same profile. Because, you know, it's even Lennox has, for example, a professional
much
planner,
bigger, right.
you know, their budget is 3.5 times as big
Right,
as ours.
exactly, yeah.
Great Barrington's what, 2.5 times as big as ours?
Right.
You know, so, you know, it's, again, just figure it out.
Got it, no worries, okay.
But let's start it close by, I think.
Stockbridge Housing, I would like to know more about that
Okay,
organization
okay,
and crawl inside it a
Okay,
little bit.
Eden Court,
Yeah.
okay, great, all right,
Why don't I do Pine Woods?
okay. Selena, 1, 2, 3. And Jan, which ones do you want?
I'll do the money
The funny.
part.
You get the money. Okay.
Good at them.
Shall I do the housing plan, the production?
Yeah.
Can't we also, and hopefully we'll have some more hands to help us, but for starters, the presentations, I'll do that too. But why don't, who would you like to see first? Would you like to have June come first and
June is from,
for Construct? And she is the housing developer for Construct. And maybe we should have June, ask June and the manager.
Kathy Wiggins.
that'd be a good idea. Seems to be the most pressing place right now, the most
Or at least the
softest
most
target.
concrete, right?
Right.
That we can actually kind of look at hard quickly.
Okay, so how about if we see if she can come at our next meeting? And just as a footnote, as a suggestion, I was looking at like every 2 weeks, which would be 3 meetings more before Christmas, and then move into January, because I think Thanksgiving, once Thanksgiving and Christmas start, it's very hard to get anyone's attention. Would those 3 dates work? The dates are the 26th, the 9th of November, and the 7th of December.
These are Wednesdays.
Those are all Wednesdays. Is that a
I'm
problem?
sorry, could you say those again?
Sure. The 26th of October, which is a Wednesday, the 9th of November, and the 7th of December. And the first one,
Sounds like an Earth, Wind and Fire song.
okay. So I'm going to put Construct on the 26th. And how about for the 9th, if we put Andrea?
Can you do that?
Andrea? Are you
Okay,
there?
every time I unmute, I get kicked out, but yeah, the 9th.
Okay, you get the 9th? And what about, who,
I think we should do something on the housing production plan in one of these.
right,
So we get started on that.
you're right. We don't, I mean, we don't necessarily, we could combine it with one of these. Probably, why don't we start the 26th? To have, because in order to do a plan or gather information, we need to get a list of consultants.
We have
To get an outline of what data can be gathered, so we can make a decision about what we want to have happen. And then we have to get, an RFP, we have to actually get an RFP form and look at that.
Do we need some recommendations for consultants?
I reached out a couple months ago to, the state has a whole bunch of housing resource organizations. And there are 6 organizations that specialize in these kind of plans that are consultants in the Commonwealth. And they gave us 3 that they recommended for a town our size. So we have that. And now it's going to be vetting them, deciding who you kind of feel like is the best fit and,
How do you want to vet them?
the way I was thinking of approaching it was there's a woman named Laura Schufeld
right, yes. Schufeld, yeah, I think.
is head of community assistance at Mass Housing Partnership.
Right.
And she's the one who actually reaches out across the state to communities to help them. And so I spent quite a bit of time on the phone with her also. And she's going to send us housing needs. And we have from Lennox a housing production plan. So we have some samples of what these are. And she's given us these three names. That's the woman who gave us the three names.
Okay.
And we could ask to interview them if we'd like. I'm sure they would probably do it by Zoom because they're all in Boston. So we could meet them on Zoom and if you'd like that. But there's three, if you look at the plans, these people are the ones that do them all. Their names
Right, all right,
come up.
everyone, right.
And just one of the, this is totally up to you guys, but,
But Patrick
think of-
might be one of these, us guys.
right, I know, but I'm trying to not, I would rather not, sort of, well, whatever, let me just say it and then you decide. Really, we can think of housing in town as falling into one of three buckets. There's market housing, there is workforce housing, and there is affordable housing, okay? The housing plan that we discussed funding and we funded with ARPA was really specifically to take a look at affordable housing and workforce housing. Workforce housing is not subsidized, but there may be policies around which we could encourage home ownership among families and among full-time residents. I like to point out that when Chuck and Jamie and I were kids, we all went to Monument and I think there was something like 350 kids in the school system from Stockbridge, in the ancient times when I was, a teenager, and this year we had 117. So taking a look at that long-term trend and at least try not to see any more attrition. You got to have a town. To have a town, you got to have some people living there full time. And it's the frog in the pot problem. It's not something we notice day in and day out. But I'll tell you, I lived here growing up, and then I moved away for a while. When I came back, it was a stark difference to me about how the town changed that way. And so this plan is about really envisioning what our policy should be to kind of, balance what the market's going to take care of itself. We had one, assessments are supposed to be 100% fair market value. We had one $800,000 assessed parcel around the lake sell for 2.4 million this summer. The market is doing just fine. But when we look at workforce housing and we look at affordable housing, that is something that building consensus around what a plan is makes a lot of sense to me. And that's not just around this table, but around the entire town. So,
The other thing that came up in some discussions that I've had is understanding what the resources are. We're not a development company. And if we come up with ideas for where projects might be, how we might add housing of this type, we're going to need to go to people who do this kind of thing because it's a very specialist kind of development. And so one of the other presentations, probably after the first of the year, but might be to try to talk to people who actually in this area who do this kind of development. Construct is one of them. They actually are a affordable housing development company. And there are others, there are quite a few in Pittsfield. But your question, Selena, is right in the sense that Pittsfield actually has quite an active affordable housing. And there is another company up there, which most people probably know is Milltown.
Yep.
And Milltown is doing a really amazing job of.
The Tyler Street project is beautiful.
They've attacked Tyler Street with a vengeance.
Yeah.
And there's some really great projects there. So they're focused on Pittsfield, but talking to them might be another.
They're focused on everything. I mean, they're opportunistic.
Right.
So I'm not sure, I'm sure they'd be happy to come to Stockbridge.
Well, they
They're an
are,
opportunity.
they're in Lennox, they
Yeah.
own gateways.
Yes,
And so they have,
But with Renaissance Capital.
do they?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's joint.
I don't know who Renaissance Capital is, but there's a learning curve and there's a lot more here, but it doesn't seem to be happening in Stockbridge. I mean, the activity is actually in Pittsfield, but there's quite a bit of development going on in Pittsfield, thanks to Milltown and, I mean, one person stepping out like Milltown brings the other friends around and people are investing in buying buildings there and trying to improve them.
There's more to work with there, right? And there's
Yeah.
older buildings that can be rehabbed, the value is
Low.
cheap.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we'll have I mean, I could see it taking several years just to figure out Heaton Court and, if there's anything to be done there, and certainly Pine Woods. I think that this is a long arc of time that we're looking at. This group can take the time to do it right, come with a measured approach, build consensus. It's nothing radical, nothing, this is just going to be, kind of, taking a look at starting with a plan. It's going to be top down. That's my suggestion anyway. And
Hopefully accomplish something.
yeah, exactly.
Is there any other item that I think we've pretty much gone through the things that I had on this list. Jen, do you have anything else? Yours? Don? Don, Selena?
Quiet.
Yeah.
Peanut gallery.
Great.
Yeah. Peanut gallery up there. We kept saying, Michael's here, but we have to defer. What else?
Yeah, he's like the Wizard of Oz over there behind the curtain.
Problem is me and Patrick were both supposed to be in the residential school committee.
Right. I mentioned
Committee
that.
meeting, so he went one year, I was.
Right, okay. Is there, pardon?
Talk about treasurer?
Oh, yes. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you very much. Would you please enlighten us about whether we should have a treasurer as an officer of this group?
I mean, you can set up a treasurer, but, both the treasurer, there's a town treasurer, a town accountant,
The
and
documents call for a treasurer. So do we have to have a treasurer who works with our treasurer, or can our treasurer be assigned to the treasurer?
I didn't look at that. Yeah, if there's.
So that's the question we'll ask the lawyer.
Yeah, I'll double check that and get back to you for the next board, whether we need a separate
Right.
treasurer appointed from this board, but all the documentation would be coming from.
And can the treasurer pick the design and the checks? Because
And the other thing is the clerk/secretary. Liz would like to manage it, but not write.
Right.
No, I think, if there's somebody that we can have come in and do this would be very helpful. I'd be able to spend more time on what I'm supposed to be doing outside of writing notes.
The lean toward having a paid.
Right, and I mentioned to Patrick, we need to come up with a policy of what boards do have and
So
should.
this is an independent board, so my sense is they're allowed.
Probably right.
Yeah, there's actually in the regulations that says you can spend up to X%, which will come nowhere near on administrative tasks. So that's going to be your decision. So, but Michael can help you recruit the person and, and manage them under the umbrella of the town.
That already do.
Yes.
You have resources.
I can approach resources, yes. See if we have somebody.
Say please.
Can we say everybody's nodding their head that it was a good idea to,
Yes, let's find out that.
you're nodding too?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll get back to you for the next.
I just have a tick.
Okay. All right, we've got 3 meetings set up at least. If you could put that on your calendar, if we kind of have our agenda, we're going to talk about housing and have construct. Those will be the 2 major items for that meeting. And then anything else
And
that,
voting for officers.
oh yeah, thank you.
Sometime in the first 2 meetings, make sure you have a point person who's did somebody decide to be the CPC point person? somebody needs to have a conversation with
Okay.
CPC to sort of figure out, kind of the next funding round, because that's coming up in December.
Does that mean
beginning of
meeting,
December.
one of us would meet with Sally?
I would think. I mean, I just think it's like, this is a new thing where now we have two organizations in town who can provide support to housing. And so just figuring out how they all work together makes sense in the short term.
Yeah,
Would anyone like?
yeah.
Or,
I can do that too. I don't mind doing that.
okay, but that's right.
I didn't assign you.
You're going to be one of us.
I felt you were leaving me out, but that's okay.
Well, you're not in yet.
Yeah, that's right. Right. All right.
So will you be in by the 26th?
Nope, because the next select board meeting after Thursday is the 27th. So, but I can attend. I'm attending as a,
As a guest.
You wanted to announce it at the next meeting.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're right. So we'll do appointments on the 27th. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And if there's if any one of us has someone, there's two slots.
One slot.
Well, there are two
Yes, I-
slots of which one Patrick would be appointed.
Or Chuck. Yeah, probably me, but I don't want to presume.
Pardon? Yeah, because there should be a selectman, that the trust document says there should be a selectman. And Patrick has been involved in this more than anyone else. But if you have any ideas for the other one, we should also be proactive.
Yeah, and we need to also reach out to the two, there were a couple of folks who there weren't enough slots for, we want to reach out to them too and make sure that if you want to still be considered, they put their name in.
But we don't make that decision. You
Nope,
do.
select board does. Yep.
All right. No further business? We have a movement to adjourn?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you all.